All right, another video from the National Conference in Austin. I hesitated to post this video because of really poor audio. You'll hear shortly what I'm talking about. You can tell I'm an amateur. I'm not walking around with a microphone and a camera in my face. But I was asked to speak in front of a group of people that are starting new campaigns. These aren't well-established campaigns yet. And so a lot of times at a national conference, you'll see people getting on stage and you could observe like, oh, they're on the same campaign. How come I'm not on the same campaign? So there can be some campaign envy going on, like put me on the well-established campaign. But the team wanted me to post this video because, really we believe the messaging is great. I mean, gravitate to the tough stuff. Don't gravitate to the easy stuff. If everybody's going left, it might be in your best interest to go right. That's really been part of my mode of operation for many years in the business is do the difficult things. That's where the opportunities lie. So I hope you enjoy this video, Challenges in Business. In the business, I have yet to find anything to feel natural for me. In the field as an entry level, I didn't do a disc profile before I started, but I'm a high C, so I'm an introverted guy, so even getting up and speaking is not natural for me. Selling was not natural. I was totally nervous. So then I figured that out. I go through the learning curves, I go through my adversity, then I become a leader. Well, that wasn't natural. I couldn't hire people if my life depended on it. Then I become an assistant manager, and then I lost my whole crew. Everybody quit on me as an assistant manager. Got to do it all over again. Then I become an owner. I've got a Leader magazine proving I was the worst owner in the company for you guys laugh. It wasn't funny at the time. It might be funny now, but I was the worst. My production was equivalent to that of a leader in another office. As an office, my whole production was that of a leader. It was pretty sad. Then you think, okay, well, he's getting better at the business. Then I become a consultant. Then I struggle my face off as an org consultant. Finally hit a milestone of senior national, and right after I hit senior national, in 2009, the crew got decimated. I'm like, how come nothing in the business has come easy for me? So again, I feel like I don't know if I'm an expert on adversity, but I feel like I've been dealt some crazy hands, and I got to play with a 2-7 and somehow figure out how to win with this thing. So I've got really three points for you guys. I wanted to summarize it really with 3 points. And so point number 1, when dealing with adversity, is I think of the basic economics when it comes to income. Basic econ. And when I think basic econ, the laws of supply and demand. All right? When the demand is low and the supply is high, that's the formula for minimum wage. Okay? It's an easy job. Anybody can do it. It's very easy to replace. But when the demand is high and the supply is low, that's the recipe for making a fortune. So I was lucky in the Bahamas. I met this guy on this magnificent yacht. And I'm like, got to know this guy. I'm like, hey, what do you do? Well, I'm a very specialized heart surgeon. I'm one of 3 people in the world that can perform this certain surgery. I'm like, oh, wow. We're getting into some of the details. Find out he's making around $20,000 every time he cracks somebody open. He's cracking 1 to 2 people open per day. I'm like, wow, you're making some dough here, 21 years of college. Right, so I'm thinking, if you're willing to do 21 years of college, you kind of deserve that kind of money, right? So the supply is low, the demand is high. It's a recipe to make a bunch of money. Growing up in my small town of Humboldt, Saskatchewan, there was always this guy, Jim Sawatsky. I was always intrigued with him. He was the guy that would get around in a hot air balloon. Not a lot of people were getting around in hot air balloons, but Jim was. He always had the nicest car. He always had, big house. I mean, he was a multi-millionaire, and I was lucky to befriend him. And I wanted to know, what business are you in, and how did you get there? And so go to find out that, as soon as he graduated college, he wanted to get into the fertilizer business, where I come from. It's a big farming community. And so he'd go around from farmer to farmer, asking the farmer if he could shovel the pig manure out of their barn. He wanted the manure, the nutrients, to start his fertilizer business. He didn't have a lot of competition. There weren't a lot of people knocking on doors. You're the 4th guy that came around asking to shovel the pig manure out of my barn. He wasn't charging anybody to shovel pig manure. He was doing it as a service to them for free. So of course everybody said yes. He just wanted the manure. As time went on, he wanted, more manure, so he started buying his own hogs, and today he's one of the largest hog farmers in Canada. Right, so Jim taught me a couple things about really how to get rich. I mean, there's really two ways to get wealthy. One of them is you got to do something that others cannot do. Does the name Victor Wembanyama resonate with you guys? Yes, anybody know how tall this cat is?
7'5".
7'5". So if you're lucky enough to be having the genetics to become a 7'5" monster and you can dribble the ball, you will be a multimillionaire. Now for the rest of us commoners and schleps that don't have some unique talent, well then we have to go to option number 2 that Jim was famous for, which is you got to do something that others aren't willing to do. Like shovel pig manure, like starting new campaigns and cracking the code. Gravitate to the tough stuff. That's where the money is. Okay, that's thought number 1, is basic economics. Thought number 2 is, your attitude when it comes to adversity, your attitude. And I would just say, welcome adversity. Like, welcome it. Roll out the red carpet for adversity. It's the springboard to success. So think of it this way. I mean, if headaches are a common problem, well, you become the aspirin to people's headaches and you're going to get rich. Right? When COVID was going on, I'm like, hey, whoever figures out the COVID shot is probably going to get wealthy, and I think that played out the way it did. So there's no talent in finding problems. It does not take talent to find problems. It does take talent to find solutions to those problems. And so my rule of thumb in my office, listen, I have no problem if you want to come to me with the problems. Just for every problem you want to discuss, you have to come with 3 solutions. You've already been thinking in your mind some solutions to these problems. You're not just coming with the problems, you're coming with some creative solutions. And then the last thing I have is really taking action. Right? So basic econ, attitude, okay, well now let's get into the doing stage of the business, right? It's the 4s, 5s, and 8s. And I think sometimes we kind of go over that, like there's got to be something more complicated in the business, in this pitch, cracking this code. And I have just learned it's all about the 4s, 5s, and 8s. I piloted many things in my time, from travel certificates to office supplies to the solar industry, and I've always relied on the system. I mean, I really believe that the goose that lays the golden eggs is found in the system. If you study the producers in the business, study great salespeople, okay, they have a ton of personality. Like, oh, you can tell that person can sell ice to an Eskimo. That person's just gifted with they've got the gift of the gab. But if you study the reproducers, that's the part I'm interested in. Not only can I produce, but I can replicate and I can teach other people how to produce. If you study these guys, it's very systematic. I was lucky enough to go into the field with Mike Harris a couple weeks ago on Frontier, and he's got his new guy Mark on day 1. At first it looks a little intimidating because this guy knows a lot of stuff. But then after 5 or 6 doors, I'm nudging Mark and I'm like, I don't know about you, but I think this is going to be pretty easy. He's like, why do you say that? I'm like, he's saying the same thing at every door. It's the same thing, study. And then in between doors, I'm like, what's that line again? Give it to me. And he just rattles it off. He's not being overly creative. He's following a system, and it's translating into big success. So I'll just close on these words. I tell my kids all the time, growth comes from adversity. Growth does not come from smooth sailing times. And so adversity makes you better, or adversity makes you bitter, or as my friend Grant Cardone says, adversity makes you a beast, or adversity will make you a bitch. You decide. You decide what you want adversity to do to you. I prefer to be a beast. So thanks for having me. I will talk to you guys all.